last night I'm watching the Angels play, right? And they had another come-from-behind win against the New York Yankees. And by the way, which one of you guys sent the text about the Angels bullpen stinking?
No, I sent that one because last night they brought in, what's-his-face, Hurtgis or something, and I said to my son, I'm like, hey, his ERA is 6.75, and they brought him in with the bases loaded. Now, that ERA represents the runners that he led on. Right. It doesn't represent the situation he's in right now, so the next pitch he gives up a double, Yankees take the lead. So I sent that group text out of anger.
Meanwhile, the Yankees bullpen blew it. So yes. Shohei Ohtani on a 2-strike pitch tattoos a ball to left center field, right? Left center field. And I thought Sunday Night Baseball, they did a great job. And last night you could do it as well, where they play the sound of ball hitting bat, and it just sounds different. It just sounds different from seemingly every other hitter in the ball hitting bat. And they do the exit velo and all that other stuff. Two interesting things happen. One, and let's work backwards. We were just talking about this. The fact that the Angels can get away with the samurai hat in 2023 is kind of awesome. Right? Now, look, a samurai is what, an ancient Chinese, is it Chinese warrior?
It's Japanese.
Japanese? Okay,
yes.
Good. That makes sense, right?
The Jedi are based off the samurai, by the way, in the Star Wars.
Do they believe in the Force, or is that the Chi?
Well, it's all the same theory, though, Doug. Yeah.
Okay. So they have this ridiculous samurai hat. Now, the samurai hat has to be culturally appropriate, right? But like Shohei Ohtani hits it, circles the bases, 35th home run, puts on a samurai hat, slaps fives with everybody, place is going nuts. So the first thing is again, and I'm not, and Shohei Ohtani's Japanese, so if he's not offended, nobody should be offended. But that's not the way it works in our country. It just takes one idiot on Twitter to go hey, that's offensive that you got, pick Mike Moniak putting on a samurai hat because he hit his 15th home run of the year. And we cancel it. That's what we do. So that's the other part to it is, and this is kind of an interesting discussion. Did you guys notice that Shohei Ohtani had a little that was a big-time bat flip. And keep in mind, the Angels lost 10 in a row. They had this amazing comeback against the Astros 2 nights before, and then a crushing loss to the Astros where they had the lead, they gave up the lead, they had the lead, they gave up the lead, they almost came from behind, and diving play in right field, and even Shohei Ohtani was like, oh, man. So it's been an emotional time. Trout's out. They got all kinds of injuries. People are talking about trading Shohei Ohtani or whatever. But Shohei Ohtani hits what became a game-tying home run, and eventually they win the game in, I think, the 10th inning. Right? And not only did he stare it down a little bit, flip that bat. So this is my opinion on it. I want your guys. And maybe this is me wanting to believe this. One of the things that you don't know about foreign players, frankly, especially ones that are going to come in, do 4 or 5, and most people think it's $600 million, is what type of dude are they? Are they crazy competitor dude? Because you can't tell, especially a Japanese player, so stoic. So stoic. You can't tell if they're up 10-0 or down 10-0. So stoic. I felt like I watched it, and again, you look back at the night before when they lost in a diving catch, and he clearly thought the ball was going to drop, and then everybody who's an Angel fan was like, oh. I think the dude's just a hardcore competitor. And it's one of the things that has to make you, if you're Artie Moreno and who owns the Angels, be like, dude, this guy he's competing. I don't think he wants to leave. That's my takeaway is I don't think he wants to leave. I think he wants to win. I think he wants to show that they can do it with just those guys. I think he likes those guys. All right, give me your hypotheses there, Jace, too.
Okay, so this is one of those things. I don't think it's stereotypical, but who knows what is nowadays. I'm saying that I think there's a cultural reason for this. Okay, I think that he has this like tremendous sense of duty, that he is under contract for a team right now, and he is going to give that team every ounce of production, every ounce of effort until the final day of his contract. And then he's going to do it for the next team. That's what I got last night with the bat flip. I don't know. It was a random Monday night game. It was the Yankees, but there was just something that he took pride in that home run last night. And I think it is this. I'm giving this team and the fans every ounce that I possibly have for them. And I'm the best in the world. There was just that kind of sense that I got watching that bat flip, which was great. It was such a great moment to see last night live, I think.
Ramos?
It's interesting because last year, Aaron Judge was in the same boat, right? He was in a contract year. He hit the 62 home runs. He got that big contract from the Giants to go play there. He turned it down, ended up staying with the Yankees. And I think the difference between the two is that the Yankees were a playoff contender, and even though they're in last place, as you said, Doug, they're 5 games over 500, and that American League East, they all could make the playoffs. They could all be in the wild card. The difference with Ohtani, I think, is that I don't think the Angels are a playoff type team. I don't think they're in the next couple years anywhere near the playoffs. And that's where I think Ohtani will leave and go to another team.
Wait, what does that have to do with the bat flip? We're talking about the bat flip.
Oh, the bat flip? No, yeah. I think that's confidence in Shohei. I think he's a confident player. I think that nothing that has happened this season.
Yes, but that is. Am I wrong? Like, if you remember him during the World Baseball Classic, I mean, he is so much about honor and playing the right way.
Right.
And like it's almost like he's the Japanese St. Louis Cardinal player. Right. And it's not that, again, I don't think there's anything nefarious when you flip a bat, but everyone noticed. It's like, damn, Shohei's flipping bats now? Damn, was he going to hit up Chick-fil-A on the way home, too?
Well, and he hasn't, to me.
By the way, it would be a great stop on the way home, right? Let's use the app.
He hasn't.
Imagine if Shohei Ohtani shows up and he walks into Chick-fil-A, right? And then you're like, mobile order for Shohei. Sorry.
He hasn't shown any difference in his focus today than he did in spring training.
I disagree. He wants it more. I'm almost sort of kind of pushing myself over to the Jay Stu thing, where you're like, maybe you're right. Maybe it is an honor thing that he wants to, but like clearly competing. This is a real thing. And okay, so do you guys think? Let's stay here. I'll give you an example. I used to work at ESPN Radio. Okay, they're not doing great right now, right? I don't know what's going on with their morning show. I don't really know what's competing against us or what's going. Like it used to be the place. I mean, just ask yourself honestly, right? When you had Mike and Mike into Colin, into Dan, into yours truly, right? It was the spot. And now, like, a lot of people got laid off, and as much as you see front-facing people, I'm sure there's people behind the camera or behind the microphone that have gotten laid off. It's harder to go to work in that environment than it is this environment. Right? We got a brand new studio. I mean, we're slimmed down. We're not cutting people. We're good. Right? I mean, this is a great environment, but I think it's really hard, and team sports especially, but just, again, think of wherever you've worked. If you're working at a place where business is bad, when business is bad, everybody's worried about getting fired. It's hard to come to work and be your most productive self. That's why I think as great as Mike Trout is, he's probably even better than we give him credit for, because like, well, he hasn't won a playoff game. Do you know how hard it is to come to work in the last 2 months of the season when you have no shot of making the playoffs? And you're Mike Trout. You're supposed to show up and be the best player on earth, even though you're not really playing for anything. And I think that's what I do still think these guys think they have a chance. I think they think if they can keep it together. It's not crazy to think that Artie could throw a bunch of money if they could get a couple games over 500. You know, man, it's hard, right? You start with Astros, into Yankees, into Pirates. Longest homestand, but it's not exactly those are pushover teams. It's not crazy to think he could make one last push at it, and then you get Trout back, and then, who knows, maybe. Crazier things have happened. That is baseball. But I'm more impressed by the house is on fire. He didn't do the Costanza and push everybody down and run out of the house. He got a bucket and started throwing water on the fire. Right? It's the old, when there's no wind in your sails, row. And that's what Shohei's doing. Ilo, what do you think? What was behind the bat flip that you didn't see because you don't have cable, so you have to borrow everybody's streaming codes?
I wouldn't call it borrow. If I'm next to them and they type it out on their phone and I look over their shoulder and memorize it, that's technically not illegal. I got to admit, you guys have kind of converted me on this. I did notice it last night that was a departure from his body language, and I would actually also go back to the argument that was made at the end of the last hour about the culture of Orange County. And you know it as well as I do, because we both are longtime residents. The vibe is different. There is so much less pressure there compared to other markets in Major League Baseball.
Just the Dodgers. I'm just the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are not the Phillies, the Yankees, the Red Sox. I don't understand. But the Dodgers' success over the last decade, and maybe the lack of success in terms of winning a World Series, has, that's a powder keg. When you're not playing well, they want you out. Things aren't great with Dodger fans when they're not doing well, especially early in the season, or, when Kenley wasn't doing well, or last year when, what's the dude to close the All-Star game?
Craig Kimbrell.
Craig Kimbrell, right? That was the disaster. Whereas it's been since Troy Percival that the Angels had a good closer, and nobody bats an eye to it.
Yeah, it's such a more laid-back, low-pressure vibe because the media is all concentrated in L.A., and frankly, it's more inconvenient for them to battle traffic and get down to Anaheim, whether it be TV reporters or columnists, what have you. It's just a totally low-pressure vibe.
I think that's why Shohei chose Anaheim at the beginning. Because he wanted to be under the radar and relaxed and in a situation where he felt comfortable to get to where he is now. Now I think he can withstand the high pressure of Los Angeles and New York. And that's why I think he's going to be moving, because he's ready. Had he started with the Dodgers, and remember, he started bad, Doug. I mean, he was not doing great his first couple of years. He was bad like that. Remember the preseason, he had no hits and 25 at-bats. I think he needed that in a low-pressure situation to build up to where he is now, which he always was this type of player.
John, I don't say this often. That was a great point. It's a great point. No, I'm serious. It's he was as hyped as anybody. Now, part of why he chose the Angels is because he had a DH.
That is correct as well, yes.
And the Angels, if he's going to pitch, they do a 6-man rotation instead of 5-man rotation. So there are some things that are unique. He wanted close on the Pacific Rim, close to the Pacific Rim. He wanted, California or state of Washington. There wasn't a ton of teams to choose from that have the DH, and he picked Anaheim. But I agree with you. I think the lack of outright pressure was really good for him. It's one of the things that, New York eats you up. Eats you absolutely alive. Boston eats you up. Now, if you can withstand it early, you're good. And they overlook your flaws as you get older. Shohei Ohtani with the bat flip was not something I expected to see last night. It's Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. The show is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Progressive make bundling easy and affordable. Get a multi-policy discount by combining your motorcycle, RV, boat, ATV, and more. All your protection in one place. Bundle and save at Progressive.com. I thought when he was rounding the bases and he had the bat in his hand, he was riding the pony. I thought that was a little bit much. I really did. And honestly, given the Yankees the double bird, that did not seem that big. I'm happy he did it, but not really that becoming of him. These are jokes if you didn't see that highlight.